Here we go. Yeah,
Just
sorry,
maybe
I was a little bit late.
while you prepare, just small intro to our colleagues, who are here. So we don't have too much people, but I think as a opposite side, we can have an open discussion, from audience. And this webinar will be recorded. So after, I hope we will engage more people to this topic. But just to introduce Jesse Meyer. As we announced it, already communicated, Jesse Meyer is co-founder of Triggre, which headquartered in Amsterdam, and he's founder of the company. And today he is responsible for product development and marketing in Triggre. But I just explained very briefly to our audience why this topic is important for us, for our community of industry automation. That the main reason is that we talk about merging of OT, operational technology, with IT technology since many years. And we see this gap between automation engineer, industrial automation, and IT guys. And I think that this is really important to progress in this, how to close this gap, how to better understand what are technology and trend in that automating business processes, an upper level of enterprise, or in different business processes, not especially processing technology. So that's why today the main goal of this webinar, just to introduce the topic of low code, no code platform, understand which technology are used in this platform. Especially this is important because our automation engineer use more and more such a platform in different kind of segment. I think for intro it's enough, so I give the floor to Jesse Meyer, please. Meyer.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Alexander, for the introduction. I'll tell a little bit more about myself in a second. Let me share my screen first, because I have a presentation. Let me see, share. Here we go. You should be able now to see my slides with underneath it Ukrainian subtitles. So hopefully the subtitles work well. I've been told by my girlfriend, she's Ukrainian, that it works quite okay. It might be a little bit slow, but yeah, this is that automatic technology that we have these days. So first,
it's okay for the moment. It's okay.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is what can you expect? I will teach you a little bit about why mid-sized companies are left behind in low code and no code, why what the latest no code trends are, specifically interesting for manufacturing companies, and a few tangible examples of using no code. Those are things that you can expect. This is me. I have a master's in science of software engineering. I have founded 3 SaaS companies, of which the first one was when I was 19 and I was still in university. And I've, with those companies, serviced customers from enterprise level all the way to small, medium businesses. So quite a range of different customers. But what I wanted to start with today is the difference between low code and no code, because they're often being put on a big heap. And I know that we have a little poll that we have prepared. I'm not sure if I can enable a poll, but I'm very curious to hear sort of from everyone here which no-code platforms are already known by people. So let me check if I can pull that up. Alexander, did we have the polls somewhere? I've not checked.
Yes, Paul.
How to show them.
Yeah, so you propose to launch the first, okay.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Let's say this is the first poll we have.
1 second, please.
Yeah, you can, if you can launch, please launch the first one.
Yeah, because it's always interesting to see which polls people already know. and which they don't. So in this case, let's see. Yeah, so which, yeah, this is obviously, so the polls are in Ukrainian, so I'm sorry, I cannot read them. But it should read something along the lines of, which no-code platforms do you already know? And I think that the link I see is in the chat. So basically, if we look at no-code platforms and low-code platforms, I always, when you sort of look at how to choose between different platforms, I tend to make this quadrant with no or very little domain knowledge versus high domain knowledge. And on the other axis, technical knowledge required or no technical knowledge required. And where some of the different solutions fall in these squares is that, for example, off-the-shelf solutions, right? So you buy, for example, a standard CRM system, for example, like Pipedrive or something like that. That is an off-the-shelf solution. You don't need a lot of domain knowledge. You don't need any technical knowledge because it's all sort of built into the platform, and you sort of make sure that you use the process that the platform says that you should use. On the other side of the spectrum, where you have to have technical knowledge and high domain knowledge, is manual coding. If you want to develop a solution which you have complete control over, then you need a lot of technical knowledge to build it, and you need a lot of domain knowledge to decide how the process runs. And low-code and no-code platforms are a little bit in between. So low-code platforms, for example, they require you to have a little bit of technical knowledge still because they are only low-code. So you do have to have some technical knowledge to be able to make something with them. And you need high domain knowledge because, yeah, you're building your own unique business process, so you need your domain knowledge. That's actually the key why you use it. And the same goes for no-code platforms that, yes, you do need domain knowledge, so that's the same, but you don't need as much technical knowledge. And I think that that's a very important difference between these two, between low-code platforms and no-code platforms. So that's an important one to remember. Let me see. I know many. I don't know where I can see any of the results of the poll, so I'll leave that up to someone saying whether I can see them.
So sorry to interrupt you, Leslie. Do you have some result of this poll? Rotation?
Yeah, we have 3 results.
So which? Can you show?
I'm kind of curious to see what people know.
One answer Zapier, 2 answers WordPress.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, WordPress is obviously sort of like let's say it's the mother of all the no-code platforms. It's been around forever, since the blogging days. And it's very well known. You do have to sometimes struggle with it a little bit, but Zapier is also a really good one. That I'm happy that people do know some of these. So let's take a look at some of the other things that you can do. So with this sort of idea of where no-code and low-code platforms differ, right? Another way to look at it is the following. So again, the technical knowledge required versus no technical knowledge required. No-code platforms, they are usually sort of different in whether it's a single point solution or a complete solution. This also goes for other solutions. So for example, again, manual coding is a complete solution, right? You can build everything with it that you want within reason, but you do need the technical knowledge. If we look at low-code platforms, it's also very complete. So low-code platforms are very complete solutions, but you do need that little bit of technical knowledge, just like we described in the previous slide. So with that technical knowledge, yeah, you need less than manual coding, but you do need some technical knowledge to work with them usually. So some skills in Java or some skills in other things. I am also, by the way, I'm relying on people. If there's something in the chat that I need to know, I'm so sorry. I don't know a lot of Ukrainian, so I'm relying on other people. So the other axis that we see here is the complete solution versus a single point solution. And Yes, low-code platforms can do slightly less, obviously, than manual coding, where you have all the freedom, but then they are much faster. But most no-code platforms are sort of more single-point solutions, like Zapier or WordPress. They are made for a specific goal. Webflow is a similar one, like it's websites. And the advantage that they have in no technical knowledge being required often translates into them having more of a single focus on one part of a process, which means, for example, if you want to make a complete solution, you'd use, for example, Webflow, Zapier, and then maybe some other backend tool to make sure that you tie everything together. And just to give you an idea of how we see the market, that's why Triggre sort of aims at still the no technical knowledge required, but tries to be a complete solution, which means that you can build a whole business application in one platform. So that's sort of how we see the market and why we chose that. I hope that this is so far clear, and if it's not, or someone has a question, I assume that someone will interrupt me. So if you then look at the market and where these platforms and solutions are targeted, specifically no-code and low-code, we tend to divide the market from, let's say, small to large. So self-employed entrepreneurs on the one end, all the way through to large enterprises on the other. And what we have is that low-code platforms, they focus mostly on the large enterprises. You can the most simple giveaway of that is that on their website you don't see prices. Companies who don't list prices is 9 out of 10 times their enterprise focus. No-code platforms, however, have focused on more self-employed entrepreneurs, small companies that then build websites, apps for other companies. So if you look at the market, then the middle is pretty much undersurfaced by these traditional low-code, no-code companies. Obviously, they're large enterprises, there are fewer of them, but the deal sizes are very high. Self-employed is also fewer. The big bulk is in the middle in this case. And that's why we try to focus also on that middle of the market. So smaller, medium businesses and smaller, medium enterprises. So we sort of say usually from 50 employees is roughly our sweet spot, up to 1,000 to a couple thousand people. But we do also have enterprise companies. So that's a little bit about how that market plays out currently. And if we look at trends then, I want to start again with that same division of the market. So if we take that same slide, if we look at no-code on the one hand and low-code on the other hand, what we see is that low-code platforms are moving further into the enterprise. And you can see that because they're more and more intertwining their platform with services. So these companies are providing both. For example, Mendix got acquired by Siemens, and I know that Siemens is a well-known company in the manufacturing world, so this is why I take this example. Also, Mendix used to be a Dutch company. So they got acquired. Why? Because Siemens wants to further move into that enterprise by offering a complete solution, including the coding replacement that Mendix can offer for their software. So you can see that they're sort of trying to bundle services with the platform all in one. No-code platforms are also trying to expand, but also to the same in the same direction. But they are trying to sort of make their applicability a little bit wider to expand into the mid-market. And they do that usually by, for example, Zapier. So we said Zapier, someone knows Zapier, that's good. Zapier has now got, for example, forms. And it has, so it's not only connections, and for those who don't know it, Zapier is a platform that you can use to connect different web applications together in a simple way. But they now also create forms and a form of sort of that you can build sort of user interface type things with them. So they're trying to make extra sort of use cases that are sort of around their traditional use. And what we do, because we're in the mid-market, we sort of move both ways a little bit. We offer more functionality for larger businesses, but we're also, at the same time, we keep working very hard to make our platform easier and easier to use to cater to smaller companies. This is why currently we focus on companies of about 50 and up, because we feel that we just have more impact currently still on the slightly larger companies, and we're trying to actually move a little bit on that end while also expanding the functionality. So these are some of the trends of how these companies, and obviously this is an overlook of how all the companies do. Per company can differ, but you see the same thing with the no-code platforms. For example, Webflow is a website application builder. They're also moving more into building a bit of logic, building a bit of other things into their platform. So you see this across all the companies. How we approach going into those both ways is, and I think that you see other companies trying to do the same. On one side, you have the number of possible use cases. So which types of applications can you build with them? And traditionally, low-code is very good at that because you have a lot of freedom. No-code platforms, like I said, are usually single-point solutions. So what they try to do is make those possible use cases expand, but also no-code platforms are easier to use in general. So those are the two that you sort of weigh. And if you look at the total market that you can address, it's sort of a combination of how easy is it to use. That means that you don't need a technical degree to use the software, but you can sort of get around with having a business analyst background or being just very knowledgeable in your field, in your process knowledge, for example. That's usually where you see no-code platforms shine. On the design type, for example, you see that designers can now build websites and you don't need a lot of technical knowledge for that anymore. So that's the ease of use. And obviously, no-code platforms are trying to expand the possible use cases. That's also what we are trying to do. But what they often lack, and I think this is one of the things that, it separates us, but also you'll see that in others, is they have a hard time increasing the ease of use. So that's one of the things that you see. They will actually expand the possible use cases, but at the same time, often what you see is that the usability goes a little bit down. It's not as easy anymore with 10 different things that they can do than it was when they could only do 3, for example. So that's a way that we look at sort of the development of the platforms and where they're focusing on. I think that many will at some point try to do the ease of use improvements, but it's hard for them. Another trend that I wanted to talk to you guys about is AI. And I have made this image specifically for this presentation. This is made by Midjourney, and I always put the prompt that I use in a caption. So I said, make me a close-up of a robot eye. The eye is a camera. It didn't quite get that because I wanted like a lens type thing. And in it, we see a reflection of the Ukrainian flag. Well, that part it got right, but the others not so much. Now I've prepared another poll because I'm pretty curious to see which generative AI, specifically tools people have used. For example, I made a list of some, so here you can see it. Which is the one, let's say, which was the one that you know best. I know many. So we have ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, like I used here, Stable Diffusion, Claude, Gemini, or Bart, because that's been rebranded by Google, or something else, because there's so many tools. So please let me know. And if we look at AI, what I want to do, and this is a big trend, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because I think it's something that you can actually use very well in many different businesses. So the trend is obviously connecting processes to AI. But the challenge that I often see is how to actually use generative AI effectively for business automation. And I'm not talking about training a specific AI engine for, let's say, product defect recognition, because, oh, Copilot, yeah, I forgot that. I'm so sorry. I forgot Copilot. Let's say that Copilot is basically ChatGPT in a way. It has GPT-4 under the hood, so I'll just sort of pretend that I thought about it that way. That's a good one, Copilot indeed. That is, I think that most people actually who use Windows now will probably have experience with Copilot. So basically, what you can do, you can train AIs, right, to recognize product defects or something along those lines, which is a very specific process. So that's a specifically trained AI. It's not what I'm talking about now. It's indeed, how do you use, for example, ChatGPT effectively in a business process setting? Because that is something that many companies are saying, like, oh, we need to use AI. Yeah, okay, fantastic. How is it going to give you an advantage? And first, we need to understand a little bit more about AI. And I'm not sure if everyone sort of is at the same level. So I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation of how I view it and how I think you can use it to your advantage. So what I did, this is way back in the day. It's still, yeah, here we go. So this is a way back in the day. I made this. This is a drawing that I had AI make. It's a Stable Diffusion, the free version of it. I said, hey, make Amsterdam in the style of Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. And it came up with this. And then I took this image because it's square and it doesn't fill my whole slide. So that's not nice. So I took it into Photoshop and I had Photoshop fill in the background. And then you get this image. So this is pretty okay. There's you know, there's at first glance it looks okay, but if you look closely, there's a couple of weird things, right? Where you see the side of the canal actually turns into a boat. That's kind of strange. And these things are not a problem in an image like this because you can see them and they're easy to correct, right? However, these sort of things are caused by biases in the system, and for some things they're harder to see. And a good example is I'm part of this Reddit group where people share their images specifically that they've created with Midjourney. And there was this one person who entered this prompt, which says something along the lines of, show me or draw a female warrior from, and then they enter the country. And I'm going to show you a couple of those. So they said female warrior from Greece, and you get this. Female warrior from Japan. So very short, sort of like simple prompt, right? So you see a Japanese warrior. Female warrior from New Zealand, you get the Maori signs on the face. Egypt, also pretty sort of the way that you see. There are some similarities that you can see. Oh, 1 second. This is the US. And the US has this issue that it has a bit of a, let's say, it has a bit of a different idea of what a warrior in the US looks like, as you can see. So that is one of those biases that's built into the system, because you don't say like, oh, it has to be a warrior with a spear, with a thing. Like, no, you say, just give me a warrior. And one company that found this out the hard way, because I always found this as an interesting one, is Amazon, actually. So Amazon, back in the day, and I think it was 2018, they stopped this experiment. I think they started it in 2015. They made an AI to judge the CVs of people that came in. And they trained it on all of the employees that they had hired, because they figured, you know, we are really good at recruiting. We hire all these really great people that are super smart and everything. So, you know, we train the AI on that. And the problem is that the AI started recruiting only men, because sadly, 80% of the people that worked there were men, because they didn't have a lot of women in the workforce that were interested in jobs at Amazon for the tech people. And then the AI decided that that was probably because they were bad at it, which is ridiculous. So they tried everything in a couple of years to get that bias out, but they couldn't because the bias was built in. So for example, they would remove any references to gender, but it would still decide that if you had attended an all-girl college and none of the men that were hired had ever attended an all-girl college, that was probably a bad thing. So you got moved out of the process. So that was a big problem, and they had to stop that in 2018. Now, the cool thing that you can do these days is actually, instead of this big black box, you can actually build the system yourself with tools like ChatGPT in a slightly different and better way. I'm going to show you how. Okay, so first we need to talk about how you can sort of work with that bias and how that bias comes to sort of exist. So all the examples that you've been seeing have been tiny prompts, right? This is a bit of a background on this. Tiny prompts, which I then extrapolated into huge results, right? So for example, the Starry Night example that I gave is just a super small prompt, or even the robot with the reflection in the eyes, small prompt, and it fills in a lot of dots from that, right? It's a couple of bytes of information and it makes like a couple of megabytes of an image. So it really extrapolates that. And you have to understand that this extrapolation is a probabilistic function. So it's just probability, right? So it tries to make the most logical combination of things. Okay, and those probabilities on each of the information points that it uses are based by its training. So while, for example, you might think that this was the only correct answer to my earlier example of Amsterdam by the Starry Night, fill it in, please. Watch closely as the center stays the same, but the around area will actually change. So here's another correct example, and here's another one, right? So the problem with these biases is that, yes, the answer is correct, but there's not just one correct answer. If you go from a small result or from a small prompt to a bigger result, there's many options that you can do and you can influence them. And this is how this bias works. So if we want to get rid of the bias, there is a different way to look at it. And that's as follows. We're going to try to turn the AI around. This is I think that this is the framework that you have to take into account when you work with these generative AI tools. So instead of starting with a small prompt and then getting a big result, try to start with a very big result, a big prompt, large piece of text, many information points, and ask it to create a very small result, right? So you want to get a tiny result. So for example, send it a book and ask it for a brief description, or better yet, ask it to score the book on some value. For example, how interesting is this book for 6-year-olds on a scale of 0 to 10, right? And then it will actually use the same probabilistic matters that it uses to explode information, to actually confine it into this really small result. And this means that the result is very reliable. And I think that this is one of the key ways that you can use these generative AIs. Make it more concrete. Let's build that Amazon AI process as an idea how you can build this. So before we go into the details of this, we have another poll, and I'm also a little bit curious to know which results, so Copilot, that's one that I have, were the previous poll, but I don't think I can see easily the results of the previous one.
You mean the poll?
Yeah. How can I see the results?
The next one, you mean, or previous?
No,
because
I wanted of the previous one. I was curious to see what, and I take Copilot as extra. I'm curious to see what people have used already.
Okay. Leslie, can we launch the second?
We have all answers ChatGPT.
Yeah. So ChatGPT and Copilot. Okay, cool. And then let's start the next poll as well, because that's whether you've used generative AI. So let's say, have you used ChatGPT? Because everyone has used that, so that's nice. In a business process before. So not like to write you a blog post or something, but actually in a business process. Like, I don't know, something like this CV process, for example. I'm kind of curious if people have used that. So if you can start the next poll for that, that is something I'm also curious in. It's interesting that everyone knows ChatGPT. It's obviously the original one. I do advise you to also look at other ones, and I'll give you some tips on how to find them. But yeah, so for the next bit, I'm curious to know if you've used it, but this is the process, right, that Amazon wanted to automate. So they have the search for candidates for a position. These candidates, they send in their CVs, so they get CVs from these candidates. They select the candidates to interview, and then they interview the candidates. And their idea was, how we should automate this process, because we have so many other CVs that we have to do. So why don't we make it so that we get we search for candidates, and then based on the CVs, we have the AI say, these are the candidates that you want, and then we interview those candidates that the AI says that you want. And obviously, that recruitment AI basically took these candidates' CVs and says like yes or no. And as I said, it had a male bias, so it ended up saying yes to men and no to women, which is not what you want. And the problem that they had was that because even if you edited the CV, if you took out the names and anything what you thought was a reference to women, the AI would still pick up patterns that you as a human wouldn't see, but the AI would see it as like, this is probably not a candidate that we want. And this is a major issue with AI, that in order to do this correctly, you can't have in your data set, you can't have out of 1,000 CVs, you can't have only 10% being women or 20% being women. No, if you want to have an equal distribution between men and women, you have to have an equal number of training points, right? So for example, Tesla is training their cars to recognize traffic lights, and that's the traffic lights. They have a lot of material of that, so they have camera images. Red lights, easy. Many lights are on red. Green already becomes a little bit of a problem because the traffic lights are not green as often as they are red. But the hardest one is blinking orange, because that is one, off half of the time, even if it's on. And two, it's hardly ever in blinking orange state. So training for an equal recognition of all means that you have to basically skew to those little the little data points. You have to exaggerate their existence a lot. That's what Amazon ran into with their data. Do we have the last poll up already or not? I think we had one more, right?
So yes, there is a third one. Just a minute, because it's in the chat.
Perfect. So whether people have used generative AI in the process before I show you how to do it. I'll vote. I'll vote as well. Here we go. Okay, so basically what I would suggest nowadays, if you want to make a tool like this, here's how you do that. And I think that you can take this process, so the way that we now talk about a recruitment process, you can take this into many manufacturing processes as well. Step one, remember the big prompt that we said? We basically feed the candidate's CV and maybe some extra information that we can find on them. And we feed that into the AI and we say, can you score this candidate on a specific skill from 0 to 5? For example, some skills that are important. So at my company, we have a whole we have these competencies that we have in a book. It's about 30 of them. And for each role, we have a number of those competencies that we want to have in people. And we score people on their competencies. So you can ask the AI to score a person on all these competencies, and then from 0 to 5. So that's what we do. We would make the CV scored on desired skills and competencies, let's say about 30 of them. So any information that we can feed into it will make the process better at determining the exact score that should be roughly referenced for what they have written and what they show you. And then you can use a no-code tool to calculate a final score. So how we do that, for example, and then obviously based on that final score, you do either yes or no, right? So what we would do is you start a calculation, you get a score for each of the skills. Let's say presentation skills, some other things. You can also call it seniority of a skill, but some things that you find are important. And then you multiply each skill score by a weight. For example, you're looking for a different profile if it's a programmer that you're looking for versus maybe a content marketing specialist. So there are different skills that you want. For example, for a programmer, you might want a good eye for detail, right? For a marketing specialist for content marketing, you might want something like empathy. These are things that you would sort of weigh differently. Then you sum the scores and you can make an algorithm, a super small, simple thing, which would say yes or no. For example, you can take, if you have many candidates, you can take the top 10. You can also say, no, it has to be a minimum score of this. And then based on that, you can accept or decline. And I think that one of the major advantages of using it this way is that, one, you can actually build that system without any bias other than what you put in yourself, as opposed to what Amazon did. But I think more importantly, and I think this is just maybe a moral thing, you can actually tell people why they got rejected or why they got accepted, because you can tell them, like, look, we scored you on these things and we decided not to invite you. Also, a nice thing is you can always expand it. So if you say like, hey, we don't have, if I say like the score has to be a minimum of 100 or something, then you only get 2 candidates. You can say like, oh, let's take the 90s in as well. Like you can be flexible about this, but it is a system which allows you to show how that works. And I think this is very important, especially in the European Union. We're getting these laws now with where traceability and AI becomes more important, and you have to be able to explain things, how you got to a conclusion and everything. So using these generative AI tools in this way will be very useful. Now, point of caution, you don't want to probably send people CVs to ChatGPT because of also European Union legislation in terms of privacy. The good news is there are those ones that are hosted by Microsoft, like, well, you said Copilot, but Microsoft actually has ChatGPT version hosted in Sweden, which is completely European privacy regulation, safe to use, adheres to all the things like storage on European soil and everything. So there are ways around that. So that's just an example, but you can use tools that are actually privacy friendly for that. So that's an idea of how you can use it in this process of using no-code and artificial intelligence. This is, I think, the biggest trend that you see now, because it allows you to use AI in a true process in your data. And usually what you do is you take this unstructured data and you try to make it structured, right? So you try to make it into scores. You try to make it into a let's say maybe an excerpt or something. You try to use it in a way that it sort of makes big data manageable, big unstructured data. That's really what we see. Other examples of how this is currently used are, for example, on the help desk. If you get emails in, if you get a lot of emails in, right? And you can do a couple of things. You can say like, hey, is this a question that seems to be in need of more technical expertise? Yes or no? If so, which department do I route it to? And you can immediately assign it to the right person instead of having someone to have to read it, check, do I assign this to Alex or do I assign this to Jesse? You know, does it need more technical knowledge, or can Jesse just handle this on his own without the deep technical knowledge? This will actually greatly improve, one, your own efficiency, but also the customer experience, right? So that's a way of using these tasks to filter things into categories, and that's a very powerful way to use it. Finally, as I said, a couple of example cases. Now, I hope that I am sharing sound when I press play. I'm not entirely sure. But it has subtitles, I think. If not, then I'll just tell you about it.
Uh,
No sound?
yeah, okay, we have no voice, but yeah, we see the subtitle. It's okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is a very short video of Rick, who's the CEO and owner, explaining how they used, in their case, they're a manufacturing company, they make these modular sustainable houses. And they started with their CNC planning, as he explained. So they made a planning tool because beforehand they would have to have an Excel sheet to calculate how long the machine would be running on a certain set of drawings to cut out, right? And then obviously after it was done, they would have to come in and put the next piece of wood on, and then start the process again and then wait. So they make this process where they can just like they have all the drawings in the system, and they would make a combination. It would calculate whether it fits, and then it would calculate the time that it would be busy. So you could start the process, and then you'd know that after 3 hours it's going to be done. But if you at the last moment had to replace one part on the list, you could do that now. And that was before that was very hard for them to do, to quickly move a drawing around and quickly calculate all these things. So that was their first thing, and then they actually moved into the adjacent department. So they started with the CNC planning, and then they went into the assembly department, because sometimes a part would come out and it was a little bit damaged or something, you know, and you have to redo the part. And then with this new app, they could actually push that part to the top of the stack and have it done faster than previously possible, because someone would have to recalculate everything. Now that was automated. So they made the assembly department part of it as well. And because of that, also if you break a part, you know, you're assembling and a part breaks, it happens. You could immediately push it back onto the stack. So that's a very good case of how to use no-code to quickly build an application for that. They did this themselves. Yeah, and basically now they've actually moved on to another department. So they keep sort of step by step moving through, which is also what we always say. Like, you want to start small and then free up some time and then move on to the next process. So that's what they've built. And basically, if you look at the numbers, they have reduced 50% of the time and money spent on human mistakes on their CNC machining process, which is phenomenal. So that's a pretty cool result. The next one I don't have a video of, but you can see some of these excavator machines. It's not about the machines, but it's what goes into the machines. This is a Canadian company, Loopcore. And Loopcore makes these automatic lubricated joint systems. So for example, the arm goes, I'm not sure if you can see this, but it does this a lot, right? And the joint there, has this problem that it needs to be lubricated. And normally you'd have to bring your machine for maintenance to get it lubricated, and it would be quite often that you'd have to do that. And it is not in commission while you do it. If you can have it automatically lubricated as it is actually working, that saves a lot of time. So that's what they do. What they had was, these are hard products to sell, because for this yellow excavator, maybe it's a different model. You need to have different parts to it. And the order of that is very different because you cannot use part A, but you have to use part B for that, etc. So these are complex orders. So they made a quotation tool for their dealers. And now their dealers can always use the right pricing and the right product for it. Where before they would send out these sheets and, you know, a customer would get a quote, but it would be the wrong one with the wrong pricing or the wrong item on it. Now they have that solved. And for them, this was 1,500 quotations they make per year for 70 European dealers, so 70, and about 10 international dealers. And this was, for them, this was actually for landing a French dealer or not. And they had to do this in 2 days. They had to show a demo at least. So they built it very quickly, the starting version of it. So that's what Loopcore did with it. Obviously you can imagine for complex processes like this, having the wrong prices used is a big problem. And it takes a lot of time on sales that are better spent talking to your customer about fun stuff instead of, oh, oops, we used the wrong price, or yeah, that quote is the wrong item number. We have to have this item. That is something that you don't want. So that saves a lot of time on their end as well. So this is Bellyprint, and Bellyprint is a company which makes casts of pregnant people's bellies. That's basically what they do. They're a franchise company, and they had a problem that they relied on multiple Excel sheets for managing orders, and as their business grew with more resellers, that was a problem. They have a production center in the Netherlands, and they have various offices for customer service and 3D scanning all over the place. So what they had as an issue there is that because of the different sheets and the different systems and multiple people working in it, they had a lot of errors in there, and they had to manually take those out, right? They had to put it in different sheets and different things, and any off-the-shelf software solution that they looked at was either too expensive for them or just couldn't do the job at all. So what they needed was actually something that would streamline that process. So they actually built that using Triggre. They made an order management system for their franchisees. So the franchisees can now just get the order in, know exactly what the pricing is and everything without having to type it into 17 systems and sheets. In the future, what they want to do is they also want to have their end customers invoicing and everything done by that as well. But I think that the nice thing here is how they explain it is that it saves them 52 days a year because they spent 1 day a week fixing all those errors in the sheets. It's a job that no one wants to do, so that's something that they saved, and that time is then freed up and then spent on actually improving the next process. And as you see, sort of that sort of step-by-step improving of processes, that's something that we promote, and I want to dedicate a little bit on that, and then I'm done. We call that the business process automation cycle. You can find it on our website. I have a link in my next slide, which is the last one, where we have this is all free. You can just see it and use it for yourself. Where we have a process to select between different processes, which one would be the best to quickly automate. Some tips on how to redesign processes for automation, and then a few tips on how you can actually automate that and how you can do that. So freeing up time, so you have more time to select the next one, redesign it, and automate it, and then do that like Wikkelhaus did, like Bellyprint is doing, and like Loopcore is doing. That's everything that I have. I'm very curious to know who has, from the poll, who has ever used Gen AI before, because I think that the results should be in. in a business process.
Yeah. Let's say what are the last result of our poll?
1 second, please. No. 4 answer not but planning to, and
Cool.
5 answer yes, multiply times.
Oh, wow.
Multiple times,
Cool.
yeah.
I was one of those, but that's good. For those who are looking into it, I'm hoping that this gives you an idea of how to use generative AI in that, because that's one of the things that no code and generative AI I feel are very powerful together. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I share tips from manufacturing companies and on no code and everything. And the business process automation cycle that I showed you, that's the other link. That is that's, like I said, that's a free web page. You can just use it. It's a free PDF that you can download. Don't have to leave anything behind. It's just information that we share that you can use to improve your business and, as we say, grow your revenue and not your workforce.
Mhm.
That's everything. So I'm open for questions now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Maybe
I'll
we can
leave this
start.
on the screen a little bit for people if they want to scan it with their phone so that they have some time. But yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome.
So, colleagues, maybe I don't know if was quite understandable for you or maybe not, but you can specify a question, you can repeat, you can maybe ask some specification of moment you did not understand, but anyway, so do not hesitate to ask a question, or even on Ukrainian, we can translate. Yeah, but I don't. Oh, you can raise your hand. I don't see for the moment. So let's start maybe coming back to your slide, Jesse. What are your advice? Because we know that manufacturers generate so huge amount of data. It's I don't remember, but it's in all data around different industry. It's I don't remember. Its highest rate. It's about 20 or maybe up to 50% of big data, and we know exactly that typically manufacturer they don't use this data, and that's why topic you proposed today and this combination no code with generative SI is really very very attractive, very interesting for us. So my question is, okay, if you don't use this data in different business process, your advice is how to better use, how to select, coming back to your cycle, how to select right business process where we can start this experiment with, up to your experience. What can be this process selection?
So I think the first thing that maybe, because a couple of years ago, right, we were all saying like, oh, how data is the new gold and everything, but data is just data and it's not information yet. And I think that that's one of the big misconceptions of sort of that era. So I would always look at what is a small process, and in the business process automation, like we talk a lot about, does it cost manual effort? Is it a repetitive process? And on first glance, you just think sort of a gut feel, sort of an idea of, hey, this would actually not be that hard to automate. That last one is pretty subjective, but it's usually fine to go with because the first two are important. So for example, and then if you have data, obviously that is helpful, but use not everything. Don't look at data as like, oh, I need to use all my data. Let's go like, look, like for example, the case that we had with Vico House, they have a lot of data, a lot of different processes, a lot of different things, but they were trying to find one place where they could start in their company, instead of sort of going into this big process of automating everything. So try to find something that uses a part of your data that is easy to understand, to make into information, so that also you get a quick win. I think that one of the things that if people have ever played games, I think that one of the key things to the onboarding into games, if you see that, and I think that's really well done in most modern days, is you get a quick feel of success. If you get a quick feel of success, then it sort of feels like you want more. And the same goes for automation. If you can make a small process with only a part of your data that you can use to free up some time, then that feels good. And then you can go into the next bit of data. Don't look at it as a whole big bucket of things. Just, I think, go for a small subset. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Colleagues, maybe you can comment if you come back to this criteria, cost or many repetitive manual tasks. What do you think? I don't know who are from you know manufacturer problem or issue in manufacturing process. Maybe Сергій Чупріков, you can comment. Так, тобто, які, на твій погляд, такі проблемні місця, які підлягають такій автоматизації бізнес-процесах, де можна використовувати ці платформи no-code, low-code, so up to you, what can be. You can speak Ukrainian if you want, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. Can you hear me or not?
Yes,
I hear you perfectly fine. Thank you.
Very thanks for your impressive speech. Yeah, it's very interesting. And 3 startups from 19 years, good result. Yeah. So I responsible for big business, and for us, yeah, it's very interesting to migration from standard approach to new approach which provide new technology. Because until Europe discuss about Industry 5.0, unfortunately, we have only Industry 3.0, partly 4.0, and only knew about new technologies. So I think it's our future. So now I have no specific question. If I will have, I send you directly. It's possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
but
I can say something that maybe we didn't touch on completely yet because you triggered that in me. And this is also what Triggre is such a good name. Everyone always keeps telling us, but you trigger me because the thing that I find interesting with standard software versus the first question is, should you actually make something custom? And that's where I argue that if it's a standardized process, like for example, accounting, no one's going to build their own accounting system unless it's like a super weird thing. But usually people use a standard accounting system tool, right? But if the process that you have is unique to your offering to the market, for example, Belly Print has this franchise model, which all the processes within that franchise model are unique to them, right? That is their manufacturing process is very unique to them. So their processes are unique. If your processes are unique and you want to support them, then I think that you should look at quickly, you have to have a custom solution because that's your uniqueness to the market. If you use a standard solution for that, then it becomes, you basically are doing the same as the competition is doing, and that's not going to make you win. And then low-code and no-code tools are basically faster. So I would always say, try to see if there's a no-code tool that can do it, if a custom process. If you cannot do it with a no-code tool in a good way, in a business-critical way, if it's a business-critical process, then move on to low-code. If you cannot find a low-code tool because it's like, I don't know, like it's embedded programming or something like it's super specific, then go for the manual way. But I think that's a very important way to look at it. Like, is this a unique process for me? Is already a way to decide, am I going to go for an off-the-shelf thing or a custom process? And then I think that no-code, low-code tools, they provide you a lot of flexibility. You can be faster to respond to changes in the market. Like Sergey says, you guys are currently, let's say, switching from Industry 3.0 to 4.0. Maybe you can skip some steps in that process. Like you don't have to make the mistakes that were made before. Maybe you can see it as an advantage that you can immediately take that step into more flexible software layer that can support processes in a more fluid way, so you can make changes faster, as an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Why not?
Thank you. Yuri, please, your question.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well.
Great, thank you. So,
oh, you're now muted somehow.
am I
You're back? Yes, this is good. Don't touch any buttons.
Yes. I'm not completely sure my question is relevant, but maybe you can develop and comment on it. So when we have to do with the standard software development procedure, then the developer holds an intellectual property right and may keep it or transfer it to the client. What issues may appear in case of low-code, no-code application?
That is a very good question. Yeah.
So can you develop and comment on it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, we actually, and it's not the only problem that you can run into. There are actually a lot of problems that you can run into. I'll try to find a link for you later. But yes, the intellectual property rights are indeed a big problem. So I fully agree that that's a big problem, and it does tie into this because indeed developers. So for reference, one of my previous companies was an outsourcing company. So I know about this because we had all these documents set up that the contract said that the intellectual property rights were transferred to us, and then we would be able to transfer them to the customer. But that's indeed a problem. But there's more. So with low-code and no-code platforms, you have to check the general terms and conditions. For us, for example, we have a specific saying that we don't own anything that you design. We own only the technology. You use the technology to make something, and that data and the design, that's yours. We can only use statistical things like how many times did you click a button or something. But we cannot use your actual design for, let's say, Yuri's competitor is interested in something. Let's go to his competitor. That's not something that we are allowed to do, but it is very important to check that when you start using a platform. There are other things. This goes from anything that's SaaS hosted. I'm not sure how many of you know about escrow conditions and stuff like that. Escrow is one thing. So escrow means that if a company goes bankrupt, that the source code of the application is given usually to a foundation, and then two things can happen. The foundation will be able to do a start a new company to continue the services, or the IP gets transferred not to a foundation, but to the customers in that case. And then you can develop it yourself. Now, that doesn't give you anything because you're not waiting to, like, if that would happen with our source code, we do have escrow, but if that would happen, you would have to develop our platform. Who's going to want to develop our platform in order to keep your application running? The biggest problem actually is continuity services. And this is something that, especially if it's a business critical process, you have to look into this because continuity services means that as soon as a company would go bankrupt, that the customer contracts are all rerouted to a different foundation. And that foundation has a contract with the hosting provider in order to make sure that your software does not go down. And that is the most important short-term thing that you have to look out for. So indeed, intellectual property rights, so they can't run away with your software. That's very important. What happens to the platform if the company goes bankrupt? Is there a way that they can continue, like can they do a restart, etc.? And if they go bankrupt short-term, will the software keep running? Question mark. And for how long will it keep running? Those are three things that I would say are very important. Apart from one of the founders having cool hoodies when they present stuff. That's also very important. I want to say that this is one of the main things that you have to look out for.
Yeah.
These three are super important. Yeah. Take very good care of these things, especially if you store sensitive data and stuff in a platform. And if you do business in the EU, also GDPR is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Jesse, thank you very much. Maybe we should finish shortly. So maybe just one more question from my side. Well, in Ukraine, we meet the challenge, we face the challenge, the lack of workforce, and this let's say trend becomes more and more critical. This is deficit of workforce becomes a crucial problem. This is why, like society, like association of industrial automation, we think that there is another side of this trend. It's of course automation. Yeah, we should speed up automation in all process, in all enterprise, all possible, let's say, segment. And from this point of view, if we rely on our let's say the more active part of our association guys are system integrator developer, what would be an approach for them to let's say to try to experiment with software like yours? So I mean, just because I suggest that anyway there is some step in acknowledge in you know to learning learning curve, how it looks like learning curve in with your product.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you can learn, for example, our product, you can learn very quickly. I would say in general, no code. So to generalize a little bit, no code platforms are usually relatively simple to learn. Now, with that also, mastering them takes a little bit longer, but you can learn them very quickly and can make something very useful very quickly. For example, we have we have courses that you can get, which take a couple of days on your own time, 2 days, and then you know the basics. And then to get, I think the more advanced one will take you probably 1 to 2 weeks to learn really the ins and outs and sort of advanced concepts, because it's a little bit like Legos. So you understand which blocks there are and how to combine them, but then smart ways to combine them. There are many smart ways to combine them. So that takes a little bit longer. And I think that goes pretty much for most no-code platforms. It's very quick to do that and see some results. For example, what we also offer, and I think that's also good to check if you look at other platforms, at any platform, is there a way that you can work with like a test environment to just try some things out? What are the things that are provided in that sense that you can easily, quickly test something? Those are important things. But no-code platforms are by no means hard to learn. Yes, you do have to have sort of a business analyst background. That usually helps, especially for our product, because we really focus on business processes. And like if you want to use Webflow, then yes, you have to have sort of a designer background for web design. So it depends on which type of platform you're using, but usually that background without the technology background is more than enough to learn these platforms. Definitely for ours, yeah.
Okay, clear. Thank you very much. Colleagues, if there are more questions from your side? Nope. So thank you very much, Jesse. So let's keep in touch, because I think that we have a big future with automation in Ukraine. Yeah, just because the needs of end user and different industries, they will grow anyway, and we have really good society, good community of system integrator developer, which really very creative guys, and they try to use different technology, different software. So let's keep in touch and continue. And I think we will come back again and again to such platform, low code, no code, because it's really growing trend. So thanks again for your intro, and well, let's keep in touch.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thanks everyone for attending as well.
Yeah. Колеги, дуже всім дякуємо. Якщо немає більше питань, то будемо завершувати.